In the last 10 years, how far have modeling amps come? Well, Cooper, today we're going to find out because we're going to compare the infamous Line 6 Spider 3 to this brand new Boss Katana 100 Mark II. So stick around. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name is Chris McKee.
And I'm Cooper Greenberg.
We're here with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and like our videos. If you'd like to support the channel, make sure to visit our Teespring store link below for some custom designed t-shirts. And maybe we should add some fashionable cardigans too, Cooper. What do you think?
Let's do it.
So today, we are kind of going back in time and retrospective, looking at some modeling amps. So over here in front of me, we have a Boss Katana 100 Mark II, which is kind of one of the latest and greatest in Boss's Katana line modeling amp, which is, their amps have been very well received, liked by many. I think they're fantastic modeling amps and really kind of showcase how far modeling amps have come. And on the other side,
got the Line 6, you might recognize this one, Spider 3, 75.
you might recognize this one from your local pawn shop.
We're archaeologists today, doing a dig.
I didn't have to dig far. So this one actually came out of my eldest son's bedroom. And so it's dirty because he needs to clean his bedroom. And it's got paint on the side from being rubbed up against walls. And basically it looks like most, I think, Line 6 Spider 3s that are out there, except the grill cloth is intact.
Probably one of the better looking ones.
It's still got the sticker on the top.
Yeah.
And, you know, we'll talk about the value of these, but these are extremely affordable amps now, and so it could be very, very cool. Okay. But, you know, let's get to it. You know, if you haven't watched our video on the top 6 electric guitars under $600, you made a statement in there that really had me thinking about doing this video.
Yeah.
And that was Cooper's high school dream of tone, which was casting off your Fender guitar and amp and grabbing hold of your buddy's Epiphone SG and his Line 6 Spider amp.
Yeah, it weirdly, it even dates back further than that. I remember my first guitar was like a Mexican-made Stratocaster, and I loved it. I had an awesome little Fender like frontman kind of starter amp as well, and it was just 2-channel. I had clean, I had some overdrive, and no pedals, no nothing, and that's what I learned on. And it was just everything that I could have ever needed. But then a friend of mine got this cool, you know, vintage cherry Epiphone SG, and he got a Line 6, and I was just blown away, and I was very jealous all the time because you could go insane on that thing. Insane.
Insane, and I had a setting for that.
And figuratively. There's people going insane back there and stuff too. But yeah. It was a really fun time for me, and exploring with all the effects and stuff. I never even knew that they weren't, like this wasn't the best tape echo that you could get. I was just like, dude, this is the gold standard of every single effect in one box.
You know, and I think one of the cool things about really just modeling amps in general, but I know these early ones was for players like yourself and me, it really kind of opened you up to what effects were. I mean, there's not a lot of availability, particularly when you're young, to just go and explore different effects, right? You can't just go buy a bunch of stop boxes because you want to kind of see what they sound like. I'll take it back even further, which is a real long time ago when I was in high school, and I can vividly remember practicing with a band in my carport in Harlingen, Texas, deep South Texas, in a caliche driveway, which, you know, no asphalt, right, no concrete, and we had just like our gear in the dirt, and crate amps and park amps, which, if you don't remember, were like a sub-brand of Marshall with Zoom pedals plugged in to the front, you know. But man, we were killing it, you know. So you know, and it was fun to experiment with all of that stuff, but one of the things that's true of that is we've we've come a long way from those Zoom pedals and those crate amplifiers and even these Line 6s when it comes to modeling.
Yeah. I think it's weird. We did that video not too long ago as well about how to record electric guitar at home. I think that a lot of now, like using a DAW, like Logic or something, has kind of taken the place of experimenting with those effects.
Or even your phone.
Things. Yeah, your phone. You can experiment a little easier now. But with something like this, you've got Boss effects in it.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the actual, a lot of times the gold standard of those effects and much higher quality build, higher quality effects, and it's really cool to, hopefully see where this will go with younger players. And
So and this video by no means is meant to knock on the Line 6. It was actually in 2011 the #1 selling amp in the entire world. And so a lot of us are familiar with it because a lot of us purchased these amps. Because I think at the time, to your point, I don't think you were wrong, they were really kind of leading what was going on with amp modeling technology, and not just amps. They had their Variacs, I think they were called, the modeling guitars. So they were really kind of early adopters of that technology, and it's just the nature of technology that it's gotten better. And now we're reviewing Tonemaster amps that are modeling amps that model only one and just do it insanely well. But there were definitely, hindsight being 2020, some shortcomings, and maybe some stuff that I think at the time we were going like, yeah, that's just not right. So do you recall some like plugging into a Line 6 for the first time and going like, no?
yeah. Before the video, you're talking a little bit about even when all the sounds are off,
It's still on.
It's still on, and then they're kind of metered one knob thing.
Right.
You finally click it onto the next one. And you know that one.
No, Josh brought up the best example, and I think I'm right that Mustang 1 amps did this too. But you would change some settings, and then you turn it off. If you've used a Line 6, Spider 3, you know that if you liked those settings, you needed to save it as your own preset with one of the little push buttons. And if you didn't, when you turned it on, it loaded whatever preset there was, and you'd hear nothing out of the amp. And then you'd slightly tweak that like gain knob, and then boom, all of the sound in the world.
You die.
Probably at 2 in the morning when everyone's asleep in the house.
Yeah.
It's really quiet. It's usually when it happens.
Do you remember going through like the preset banks and seeing like black hole tone, and then you're like, oh, I wonder what that sounds like, and it's like this perfectly almost dialed in like Soundgarden tone.
Yeah,
that was the best.
That was.
Cool. Or you see like Welcome to the Jungle or something. This amp made me learn a lot of songs because I wanted to be able to play them.
Yeah. I always wondered if they didn't come right out and say what they were because of licensing.
Yeah.
I know Apple does that in GarageBand. You'll find amps or pedals that you can clearly tell if you kind of know gear what they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
But they're obviously not saying that. They look close enough, and so I always wondered that with these. Do you remember? Do you ever use one with a foot pedal?
I never did. I didn't have a ton of access.
So if you never used one of these with a foot pedal, the foot pedal connected to the very front, and it looks like a phone jack. It's actually called an RJ11 connection, but it's way back in the day when people actually had home phones. What you would plug, it's the same cable, and they were notoriously kind of spotty. You'd plug in and like you'd go to switch, and it would take a second, and it wasn't the best application of switching on the fly. And also, I knew a number of people where the cables went bad. Now, granted, it's a phone cable; they're pretty readily available. But that was kind of an interesting thing, and they weren't the only ones that did that. If I recall correctly, Peavey, their Viper amps were doing the same thing using either the RJ11 or like an Ethernet connection. And I don't know why. If it was just instead of a 13-pin connection it was more modern. It locked in. I have no idea why they chose that. It's futuristic. It's like the internet.
It's interesting how you say like you bring up the Viper. Even now, like modeling amps have very like kind of hardcore names. You got the Spider, Katana, Viper. They'll give you some clean tones.
Fender's so old school, right? The Mustang GT. That definitely tells you the demographic.
Yeah.
So versus the Katana or the Spider.
The Spider.
Yeah, I never
They're
noticed that before.
Names, yeah.
That's great.
Very sharp.
So they've come a long way, but let's compare these two now. Obviously, this is not an apples to apples comparison. We're really wanting to see where they've come along. And one of the things that you and I were noticing early on was kind of the things that you have on the front panel. This is really kind of set up, like that front panel Fender type. This is more kind of Marshall-esque, where you've got the connections in the back. But my back panel is pretty busy, and your back. What do you have on the back of your amp?
On the back of this amp, I have a place to plug in your power cord.
And
I have a speaker, the back of a speaker, and not much else.
And that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the back of this Boss Katana, I've got, let's see, power amp line in and out, a stereo expand switch, effects loop, return and send, a USB connection, an aux in, foot control using a 1/4-inch connection, by the way, and then an expression pedal that uses tip ring sleeve, and a headphones out or record out using 1/4-inch, and there is a place to plug in the amp as well. So that's definitely more. And you said at the very beginning, it was one of my complaints with this. I think these were awesome if you wanted high gain tone. I know a lot of guys. We actually had a guy win our Guitar Wars competition, and what he played on was a Line 6 Spider 3 back in the day. And if you wanted that high gain tone, they really were good at that. And I think modeling amps in general have continued to be. And I think that the reason for that is compression. And see what you think about this. When you go high gain and you want that like ka-chunk sound, like I've heard John Petrucci talk about this with his boogie amps, like you really want it to be sharp and kind of compressed, and you just need it to be very responsive.
Yeah.
And these did that very, very well. But if you try to go to like a clean sound and you want a lot of expressiveness, I don't think the technology was there to allow that. And so that's why you could put on a clean setting, you could turn all of the effects off, and it still sounded very processed in nature. Do you think that's what it is?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think the Katana does have a better, just regular clean sound. However, I would say something like the Tonemasters, since it's an entire, basically instrument dedicated to emulating one tone, that is going to be the modeling amp that will most accurately depict somewhat of a just like completely unprocessed signal.
Well, how an amp just typically works. And because of that, I was saying earlier, I don't think this took pedals very well.
Yeah.
If you were trying to use this amp to get like a crunchy blues tone with like an overdrive pedal, it just didn't handle that well. And I think it's interesting to compare like the Katana and other modeling amps that now have effects loops in them as kind of this recognition that it's got some onboard effects, but you might want to bring your own stuff to the table, and it plays well with those.
Yeah.
Versus I really think the idea here was, and effectively did, just these are all of the effects that you need.
Yeah.
And you're going to set up your presets and then you go with it.
Cool thing about that one, also kind of relating to the Tonemaster, is it does have the attenuator on there, and it has that kind of cab simulator like sound editor, which is another just
I don't
really
think they
cool.
called it that, but I'm sure that the stuff that was going on in the presets for this amp was
The same idea.
trying to do that, because you can't effectively model certain amps without trying to model, emulate the cab.
Yeah.
So, this has a number of things. There's different processors. You've got your tone settings. You've got one thing this has that I'm sorry, Boss Roland. It's got an acoustic setting. Don't plug an acoustic into one of these. I mean, I guess if you have to, that's fine. But I get this question all the time, and that's why I want to say something. This doesn't have a tweeter in it. And people are always asking, can you plug an acoustic guitar into like an electric guitar amp? You can. Generally you're going to deal with feedback issues because your gain's generally too loud. But the bigger issue for that is because it's all mid-range. There's no high end. And usually what you want is that nice, crisp, clean high end out of an acoustic guitar. So I'm curious what they're doing EQ-wise for that acoustic setting. But get an acoustic amp or something that's really kind of dual purpose if you want that. That doesn't have an acoustic setting that I recall. It did have a tiny little LED screen. Did you ever use that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
For the little presets, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. We've come a long way. Of course, this one doesn't even have a screen anymore. And then you compare it to something like Fender's doing where they've got screens, there's apps, there's all sorts of different ways of kind of approaching the modeling app technology now.
Yeah. I like the screen for the fun aspect for me, and especially
For the
on,
black hole
say,
tone?
black hole tone, and when you can kind of go in and edit all the different effects of the presets on, say, the Fender modeling amps. Something about the lack of a screen on the Katana, this might be controversial. It makes me feel like it's a little bit more serious.
Well, I think it's more streamlined and definitely more in line with what a traditional amp is.
Yeah.
And so kind of like the Tonemasters, It's taking the approach that you can very easily make changes without having to, go through a bunch of menus and things like
Yeah.
that. So, very cool. Well, what we're going to do, and it's not a fair comparison at all, but it's fun to kind of throw back.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and we're going to compare these. You're going to play through them, and we're going to compare the clean and the crunch and the lead. Now, this has an amp type for brown, and we're going to jack up some of the gain and compare that to the insanity that you get, and see, go back in time with some vintage Line 6. So let's check it out. All right, well, there you have it, a nostalgic trip to the past, 10 years roughly in the making. So, I have a soft spot in my heart for old gear, the Line 6 Spider 3, the pods. We talked about the pods. Again, Line 6 kind of really early on there with the modeling. There's a lot of cool old gear from like the 90s and stuff, and the early 2000s that's really great. What do you think?
I think so. I think that like we have some old cats that work around the store, like Gary, and Gary's like, man, if you're not learning on a Marshall half stack with like a tone
That
bender,
you can turn up like half of one.
yeah, then that's cheating. And it makes me think like, what if when I'm 70 years old, to my grandson being like, if you're not learning on a Spider 3, you're not learning.
It would be the Spider 37 by then.
Yeah, but this will be like the dusty old, combo amp that'll pull out of the basement and be
Maybe
like,
it'll be vintage gear one day.
It will be. It's cool.
I'll tell you this. So, best-selling amp in 2011. I alluded to at the beginning of our video. This might be, spoiler alert. This could be a whole totally different side of this video. The very best deal in used amps around, because I got that for $50 with the sticker on the top in the box. It was clean when I got it. It was pretty much brand new. And a quick view of the internet is that's pretty common.
Yeah.
You can buy these in good nick for about $50. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. But I mean, that's 10-year-old amp that if it's working, it's definitely worth $50.
Yeah, even if, let's say you don't have like a computer with logic on it or something, and you want to sort of mess around with effects and figure out for yourself what kind of pedals you want to go buy, it's a pretty nice tool to do so, or learn how to, you know, blend effects or all that different kind of stuff, I think.
So there's the spoiler, right? Is the $50 used Line 6 Spider 3 versus what, $549 or $600, whatever this is, for the Katana 100 Mark II. That's a really good value. Obviously, this is a better amp. And I don't think anyone would argue that. Even Line 6 wouldn't argue that. That's the whole point of technology moving forward. That's why they have a Spider 4 amp. You know, that's why they have their whole Helix stuff, right? Because technology marches on and things improve as a result of it. But it's been nice kind of visiting a relic from the past, blast from the past, so to speak. An insanity blast from the past.
It's insane.
So anyways, we hope you enjoyed this video. Drop us your thoughts below. Did you have a Line 6 Spider, Spider 2, Spider 3, one of those pods? You know, did you have fun with it? Do you still have it? What are your thoughts? And on, you know, modeling amps in general, I think some people didn't like these. They hated them, turned them off of modeling amps forever. But as we've seen, they've really come a long way. And if you are in that camp, maybe you should give them another shot. So let us know below what your thoughts are on this video. And if you haven't done so, what should they do, Cooper?
You got to subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 100,000 by the end of the year, and we're seeing all the numbers go up, and it's really very nice of you guys to support us like that. But yeah, if you haven't already, please subscribe, turn your notifications on, and we appreciate it.
Like the videos, keep coming back for more. At the end of the day, the very best guitar in the world is one plugged into a Line 6 Spider 3 on Insanity. So thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.